रापाउदाउपार पृथ्वी आकाशः किरणः ये किरणः अग्नि उदकम्.
Good evening, everyone. This is Asian Movie Pulse Interviews. I am Sean Barry, and tonight I am joined by musician, influencer, and innovator Annette Philip. Annette is a versatile vocalist and the founder of the Berklee Indian Ensemble of the Berklee College of Music. Most recently, anime fans may recognize her as the vocals of the song Olapu Upula from the anime series Godzilla Singular Point. Thanks for joining us tonight, Annette.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you so much.
Of course. How are you doing?
Oh, great. Yeah, it's great to be here with you, Sean.
Excellent. Good to hear, Annette. So I guess to start things off, Annette, my first question to you is, what inspired you to pursue a career in music?
Well, at a very young age, I understood that music was just giving me so much joy, and it gave me so much satisfaction and fulfillment, even as a very young child of 4 or 5 years old. And it was very clear that I just need to make sure that this is a part of my life, part of my everyday, or I would say even more than part of my life, this is the life. So in some ways, I felt like music, chose me. I think people say that often, and I definitely had that experience. And with anything that was music related, specifically collaborative, I just was always really enriched by it and nourished by it. And so it was clear. Yeah, there's no two ways about it.
What about music speaks to you compared to other art forms, like, say, filmmaking or photography, or what about?
Well, I actually love other art forms, including, culinary arts and graphic related stuff, dance. Uh, for me, it's just that music was the primary mode of expression. I don't think that I can compare and say one is better than the other. I just think that that's what I gravitated toward more. And I also spent many more years, immersing myself in. And if anything, the one difference I might add is that whether you consider yourself musical or not, everyone has the potential to be musical. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, I have no rhythm," but you breathe in rhythm. Your heart rate is rhythm. When you walk, you have a natural rhythm. So even I often will tell people to notice the natural rhythm that they have within themselves. And I found that even at concerts, you may not always be able to stand up and dance or join someone and paint, but using your body, which is such a beautiful instrument, you can clap, you can vocalize, you can stomp your feet, you can join music making no matter where you are, who you are, what your background was. So for me, that's very powerful. But I can never say that it is better or more elevated than any other art form. But I do think it does allow you to immerse sometimes more easily.
And of course, I mentioned earlier, Annette, that you are a versatile vocalist. I guess my question is, what are some of the challenges of being a vocalist? Because that's not always an easy profession, obviously.
Well, I don't think any art form is easy. Compared to some instruments where you can, pluck something, it's outside of you, or you can press a note, or you can, like a trumpet, you can press a valve and blow through it. Um, the body is the instrument. And so even if you're having a bad tummy, you could probably get through playing guitar. Maybe, right? Like I don't ever want to like take even that for granted. But if you're actually having, a tummy ache or you're feeling like you can't breathe fully enough, it really impacts your singing in the same way that anyone, I mean, it's not even for singers, but often when you're feeling emotional, one of the first places that it shows up is your voice. You know, you kind of feel like your your voice is impacted in some way, like you know, you feel like a lump in your throat, or you know, like your mouth gets dry when nervousness happens. And so I think a lot of people don't often realize that you know, you're walking, talking, breathing, living with your instrument day in, day out, and everything can affect your voice. And I think one of the challenges is for women, for vocalists, to realize how much they need to take care of themselves and their body and their mental health and spiritual, psychological, all of that, because it does seep into your instrument and it does seep into your performance. But other than that, I would say it takes, you know, just as much work to be a vocalist as it does to be a chef, as it does to be a drummer, or a painter, or skateboard artist, whatever. You know, they all require practice. They all require dedication.
Wow, that's a beautiful way of putting it, and that's actually a really great way of describing it. That the body is an instrument in and of itself. Like that's a really fascinating way to look at it, honestly. I guess a follow-up question was, what is it like working in the music industry regularly?
So for me, it's every day, every single day. I mean, this is what I do. This is my profession, and it's my way of life. It's wonderful. I think the music industry is such a vast, you know, amazing, adventurous, exciting place to live, and there is, you know, music from all over the world that you can delve into, and you know, there's such a mosaic of things you can do within the profession, whether it's, you know, writing for film, or education, or you know, being a performer, or being someone who handles music business, or being an arts entrepreneur, or you know, playing a very specific role in the curation of festivals, you know, music therapy. I mean, there's just like a zillion things that you can do within the profession. So it's one of those career paths and life paths where the learning is constant. There's always something new that you could explore. There's infinite possibilities also for collaboration if you're open to that. And yeah, it's a colorful, beautiful way to live.
Wonderful. And interesting you mentioned colorful, because you yourself have also covered a wide range of music genres, from jazz to R&B to classical to traditional music, of whether it be Western or Indian music. And this brings us to, I think, another topic of interest, is that you're also a teacher, and notably founded the Berklee Indian Ensemble at Berklee College of Music. I mean, that's extremely commendable. And I guess my question to you is, how does it feel coming this far? I mean, having this passion for music, and now here you are, you know, really like teaching others now about music.
Yeah, so education was actually part of my this path for me from a very young age. And you know, you don't always notice that you're formally doing it, but I really feel like I was kind of in this path even in high school. You know, and I think I have a natural skill of creating community and bringing people together, and also having a vision, and noticing that you know, that vision was accepted and shared and loved by other people, and so, you know, together we can go do great things. So it's lovely being at Berklee. You know, it's such a diverse place, and there are already musicians at Berklee from about 105 countries, I think, right now. And 2011 was when I founded the Indian Ensemble, and it was a great opportunity to bring my culture, into the educational curriculum, but also bring my belief system when it comes to community projects and collaborative projects, which is that, you can do really high quality things, and it can be done in a non-competitive, non-hostile, very collaborative, very nurturing, nourishing environment. And we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary last year, and then this year we released our debut album, which is called Shuruaat, which is Hindi for beginning. And the album features 98 musicians from 39 countries, 10 songs, and we submitted it for the Grammys, and we're nominated for a Grammy. So that's been a really beautiful, exciting, delightful experience for us, especially because it was our first submission to the Grammys, and we're so grateful and honored. And there's just lots more music to be made, and we're very grateful that the audience for this music over the last decade has been very global.
Mm-hmm.
And we have close to 300 million organic views. None of this was initially released commercially, so we're just very grateful. And it's learning every day from each other, so it's lots of fun.
Terrific. And congratulations on that nomination. That's a really big deal. Another great thing I noticed is that you tend to bring a lot of traditional cultural elements into your music teaching, such as Indian culture. I guess my question is, do you think there needs to be more cultural lessons and study when learning music from around the world? Because obviously, music around the world is different.
So maybe, Sean, I didn't understand the question. What do you mean by could you elaborate the question a little bit more?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Like further researching and understanding different cultures perhaps can help with learning different styles of music from around the world. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll actually give an example outside of the Berklee bubble. I'll give an example of my vocal quartet. I'm in a group called Women of the World, and that is also about 12 years old now. It was formed by a Japanese vocalist, and the lineup is 4 women musicians. We sing in about 37 languages, and it's traditional music and also popular music from many, many different cultures. And the primary way that we, start to learn a piece is that we find someone who's a native speaker of that language and who's a native of that culture. And we usually invite them over, come hang out with us, tell us about your country, tell us about what this song means, like every single word, every single line. What's the food like? What's the weather like? What's the geography like in your culture? Because the reason that this is important to understand is that art and culture came through society, and society is so impacted by the weather, by the geography, by the if you were a coastal country or a city versus if you were living in the mountains, or if you lived in the rainforest area, or if you lived in a desert, even your body is different. Like, how Eskimos, their facial features are very different from someone who lives in a very hot country, because the body naturally evolves and adapts. And because of that, the language changes, the kind of sounds that the same human body creates are very different. And so, to give one example, Balkan music, right, from Bulgaria and that Eastern European region, one of the reasons that the Balkan vocal sound is so distinctive was because many of the folk songs evolved from people having to communicate with one another across the mountains as they were working on, agriculture or whatever. So if you say, "Hey, shall we go on a break?" You might not hear it. And so they used a lot of projection and placement. They would say, "Hey, hey, And I'm not actually doing this louder, I'm just placing my voice in a different place. And because that was required in the geography, it also seeped into the music. So if you listen to Balkan music, the sound is much more, it kind of cuts across much more than, let's say, a music from a different culture. And so I do absolutely agree with you that cultural studies, where you understand the sociological, the economic, the political, even the religious, the spiritual, all these different factors, like why is the music this way? Why is the culture this way? Why do they practice these things? Why is their costume like this? Why is their food like this? And you really start to see the similarities. So I absolutely agree. It's very required. And it's fascinating. I think what happens is you realize how much is similar, and you also realize how much is different and how cool the differences are. And I think in the world, if you see, people are afraid of each other, not because there's anything to necessarily be afraid of, but I think they're just afraid of the unknown. So yeah, that's why people are sometimes closed to another culture, because they just don't understand it. As soon as you break down the reasons for something, there's no reason for fear, because you get it. It's not odd, or it's not the other anymore. It's just a different way of living.
And it's rewarding because you're learning something new. And learning something new can be really fascinating and exciting, but also just very, in many respects, it can also be very spiritual for many.
Yeah. I mean, I think our goal as people is like keep opening your horizon, keep opening your mind, and music is a great way to expose people to all sorts of new ideas that they may never meet otherwise.
Right. And also, you mentioned that, and this kind of also this actually goes directly to one of your previous points, is that it's bringing, instead of always being a competitive nature, it's bringing people together.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really, I mean, that's a brilliant way of putting it all, and thank you for telling me all about that. I mean, that's really, I think that's also a great message, because definitely I think if people who are passionate and interested in music should definitely open their horizons in order to explore, different types of music around the world, because, the music, let's say, in any of our individual native countries, is all going to be different to one another. But learning can help, bring us together.
Yeah, totally. And I feel that people should travel. If you get a chance to travel as much as you can, even if it's only in your country or
Absolutely.
Like this is the best education. I think traveling is so great.
Yeah, traveling really, I would definitely say traveling, not only that, it's actually, that's a great way of putting it. You describe traveling as education, but that absolutely is right on point, because you're learning it, you're experiencing something completely new, and you're realizing, hey, the world is a much bigger place than we give it granted for.
Yeah. I think you learn to take yourself less seriously the more you travel, and also you learn that how different cultures react to the same thing. And I feel like I'm wiser because I saw, I've traveled to Japan several times. I've been in Japan 5 or 6 times, and Japanese culture is so interesting and so unique. And I've also stayed in the US for 15-16 years, and every part of the US there's something different to learn, and how small things, it's always in the small thing that you realize, oh wow, I could deal with this problem in my life the way that they approached it, and it's also fun. It makes your life more enjoyable, I think.
Absolutely, it does make your life more enjoyable, and also, it gives you variety. It gives you variety as opposed to just, perhaps the things that we're accustomed to in our daily lives. I guess a little bit of a question to add to that, before moving on to the next topic is, for you, what was some of the most effective tactics of bringing people together with music lessons? Of course, we're in there is, of course, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, but regardless of that, if anything, I've noticed that online there was a huge eruption in music. So in many respects, do you also think that like music really brings the best of us during our harshest times?
Yeah, I guess the reason that music is so pervasive is that you can engage with it actively and passively. There are some things that you have to watch. Like if you're reading, like you have to, concentrate and like actually be there, present. But
Right.
music is interesting in that, yes, you could be really present. Like let's say you go to a concert and really like watching, or you're watching a music video, like you're really into it. You're really like there, 100%. But then there's also music that puts you to sleep. There's also music that you can use for meditation. And I'm very interested in the therapeutic effects of music. And in one of the projects that I'm doing, I was working with a music therapist, and she was talking about the fact that, the resting heart rate is a certain number of beats per minute.
Mhm.
And even in hospitals or in music therapy environments, if you put on music at the same beats per minute, BPM, of your resting heart rate, then the body actually, just by, even if the body is agitated, but you listen to music which is at a lower heart rate, your heart rate tends to equalize with that. And so it is actually a therapeutic tool that you can search on Spotify or on YouTube for, BPM of whatever, like 65, 68. And there are playlists of music which are just at that BPM. And it is said, that's even without doing anything, just by listening to it, your heart rate, your everything is kind of in vibration with it. And so I think that's a scientific way to look at it. But science is so a part of all these things. We often don't connect music and science, or art and science, but it's very much connected. And like it's just the body rhythms, like the whole thing, all of nature is vibration. Like everything is vibration, and sound is also vibration, right? So I feel like that's one of the reasons that it's as powerful as it is.
Excellent. Great way of putting it. I guess now to move on to the next topic is one of your latest contributions, of course, in the entertainment industry that has garnered a lot of attention is your contribution to the soundtrack for the anime series Godzilla Singular Point, with you providing the vocals to the haunting song Alapu Upala, which plays throughout the series and plays a significant importance to the story of the show. I guess before going into more about the song itself, how familiar were you with the Godzilla franchise beforehand?
I wasn't. I mean, I knew who Godzilla was, completely, but I really didn't know much about it, and I still have a lot to study. To be very transparent and very honest, so I'm and in no ways a master of that subject.
No worries. I guess though, while you've been like kind of learning about more and more what, Godzilla as a film character or character in entertainment in general, did learning about the character of Godzilla kind of play into, of course, the song Alapu Upala in the long run when
It didn't, because I and this is an interesting thing, that a lot of times projects will come to you and you get a portion of the context. So I was simply told, and I'll give you who I worked with. I was called by a former Berklee peer of mine, colleague of mine, called Yuki Kanesaka. He's a Japanese producer and multi-instrumentalist who I have worked with for many, many years in Boston, and just an amazing, amazing person. You should look him up, Yuki Kanesaka. And he called and he said, "Hey, there's this movie and there's this series, and they are looking to have this song in Sanskrit, and do you speak Sanskrit?" And I had learned Sanskrit in India. Most people learn it for at least 3 or 4 years in middle school. So it's sort of like some people learn Latin. It's an old ancient language, right? Sanskrit. So I said, yeah, I do know some Sanskrit. I hope I can remember it. And it was being produced by Toho Music. So there's a lady called Yui Arima who was the main person, and that's it. They just said, okay, there's this song. We might do 2 or 3 versions of it. We're thinking it's kind of lullaby-esque. That's all. And can you look at these lyrics? And the lyrics actually came to me firstly in Japanese. So of course I don't read either of the scripts. So then Yuki kind of tried to write it in English, and then I tried to find someone who wrote in Sanskrit, and we went back and forth, and we tried our best to kind of see what it meant. And yeah, there was definitely it was just an unusual way, the whole project, the way it came about, and I had very little context, and so they said, well, just interpret it. Like, what do you want to do with it? And we had a Zoom session, and Kan Sawada-san was on that call, and they just were. They said, like, can you sing it back to us? So I tried a couple of lines. Oh, we really like when you do something like this. I said, okay, yeah, I can do that. And then they said, we'll try something else here and there. So that's really, that was it. And so I recorded I recorded a demo actually, and I was a little sick that day. So I just did my best, and I finished the demo and I sent it to them, and they approved the demo. And so I said, okay, well, let me record it for real, like a proper version. And I recorded a proper version, and I sent it to them, and they said they were going to use the demo. And I was shocked because
really?
I didn't think the demo was that good. And this happens so much in the industry, that a producer or a composer or a director kind of gets attached to the first version that they hear, and many times the first take is the most truthful, because you're not overthinking it, you're not over analyzing it. So I'm really honored that people have been so kind and so loving towards the 3, the many versions that we have of the song, including the choral version and the gentle lullaby-esque version. And I'm still in shock that they used the demo version.
That's I mean, that's a exceptional demo, I have to say.
Well, it's so funny because I think everyone is their biggest critic, their own biggest critic, and I whenever I hear it, I'm like, oh my god, so many things. But what Yuki Kanesaka and what the other collaborators said was that we don't want it to sound perfect. Where it comes in the story and how this is going to be used ultimately as a theme, we don't want it to sound like a big performance. We actually want it to have these different like raw, very human, very, yeah, not at all like a big flashy performance. We want it to be really simple. And so, that I guess without knowing it, it just kind of ended up that way. It's so interesting what you think is like, as an artist, sometimes what you think is your best performance is not always serving the story and the vision of the director and whoever is producing it. So when they said we use the demo, I said, okay, namaste. I will, it's yours. It's your baby. So I respect whatever decision you take. And again, really so grateful to get the opportunity. I am absolutely in love with Japan. I've been there so many times, and so to get this opportunity, I have to really thank Yuki, and I really hope there's another opportunity to work with this team. And again, very grateful to everyone in the world that has embraced the versions of the song. It means so much, and it also is a big lesson to, yeah, to kind of release things. Sometimes you feel, you want to control, but you also, sometimes the best things are when you let go of control.
Absolutely. And yeah, like what's great about that song is there are different versions, and each version, I think, throughout the show definitely expresses a certain feeling. Like the regular lullaby version is very beautiful and calming, but it's also very haunting, and there's something mysterious about it. But also then you have, as the show goes on, when it used more and more as, Godzilla's causing more and more destruction throughout the show, it almost feels almost like an omen in many respects. And then the choir version, which is incredible, by the way, the choir version is very like pretty much like this is it. This is, this is the final confrontation. And then there's one more version that, without spoiling at the end of the series, that's very like almost like calming and like almost like you mentioned, it's like almost like at ease. Like it's just almost like everything's okay. Um, and I guess my question to you is, with the song being very beautiful and haunting, when you analyze the lyrics, it tells a story. Um, I guess my question to you is, initially when you were working on the song, did you like interpret that the song was kind of going to be used as a metaphor of like what would end up coming later in the series?
I was not given much context. Yeah, yeah, which is why, like my proper version was interpreted in a very, very different way. And in some ways, when you don't have the full context, like you leave space for, it's almost like divine, like there's magic that happens, which is not your intellect, but it's just kind of, you just kind of, it's around you, right? Like there's collective wisdom around you, but
Hmm.
it's not you that are giving some great performance, but it's just something was inspired in that day, in that month. Even the fact that I was kind of sick that day, might have actually been better for the interpretation that they needed. Uh, and it was again just an unknown thing, and you just trust that they have the vision, and yeah, you just try to deliver. But sometimes you're delivering in complete no context land. so 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 it's yeah, I my answer is I had very little context, but um, in the Zoom session, I understood that they liked some of the ideas that I had. Like I was taking creative liberty in a few phrases. Like I would, elongate something, or I would, make something flow in a different way, or be harsher in some ways. Those places, again, without context. they were like, that we like that more of that. So that's all I had, in terms of direction, and just again like surrender to the process and trust whoever has the vision.
Fantastic. And I mean, what was your reaction to seeing you're singing your music being put to some of the imagery in the show? Because some of the imagery is downright apocalyptic, yet there's this really like beautiful and almost, like you said, lullaby-esque song. I mean, what was it like seeing that music put to some admittedly at times terrifying imagery in the series? What was that like seeing like now with the images in front of you? What was that like?
You kind of marvel at um, the ability of the writers and the directors, the composers, to take a single theme and extrapolate so many things from it. It definitely, it surprised me. It was like, oh, okay, who knew? And yeah, it was a great lesson. I felt, even to me as a musician, I would say it was a great musical lesson. That sometimes, the very, very simple things can be really effective, and it's, I think we all know that as a concept, but oftentimes, our artistic ego also comes into play, and sometimes, you just want to do a little more, you just want to show a little more, and I love how clear they were about the essence, what they wanted. I would never in my wildest dreams imagine them to use the demo. Never. So amazing lesson for me as an educator, as a musician, as a composer myself, to really stay with the vision and stay with the simple. And I could never have imagined that it would be used in so many different ways. It was jarring for me, and at the same time it was also kind of a revelation to see the interpretation that they were adding to it.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a great story, and again, like I said, I mean, I would never have thought that was the demo that they used. Was it the same? Were the same audio of you singing? Was that also used in the choir version at all?
No, we actually recorded, I think, 3 or 4 versions of it, and because the time signature is different, like one of them is like in a waltz, and there's another one which is rubato, which is not in a strict timing. And then the choir, I also organized the other singers. All this was recorded during the pandemic, so I recorded the first foundational piece, and then I asked different singers to come in, and we layered on top of each other over and over and over again, to create this massive epic sound. But
An epic it was. An epic it was.
Yeah. But each of them was done separately. We did different versions.
Wow, that's again, and the fact that during the pandemic, that's really commendable work. Great work, Annette.
Thank you for. I just thank you to everybody for listening, and thank you for your interest in just taking time to talk about this.
Of course.
I've never told this story to anybody.
Nice. I guess one of my final questions before we move on to the end is, what are your feelings on the current state of the music industry right now?
Oh, I think in some ways the pandemic has been a great teacher and a great liberator and a great motivator, because many musicians of all ages realized that there is more self-sufficiency that they need to build, because the music is around you, inside of you, all the time, wanting to be expressed. And if you don't have live performance venues, if you're not able to tour, if you're not able to do shows where people are showing up, well, what do? So you record, create, you write more music, or you collaborate with other people. You find different ways to use technology to help you get that music out of yourself and out into the ether, into the air. So I do think in many ways it taught and almost like forced people to become self-reliant, and really grab onto technology in a way that probably they wouldn't have for another 5 or 10 years. People would have resisted it. And I think the other really interesting thing is that there were lots of very cool collaborations which usually may not have happened. There were many cross-cultural collaborations that were going on, and I'm so grateful for that. And the third very interesting thing was it really made all of us as live performers realize the gift of having a live audience. I remember so much, like my skin, like everything in my body remembers the feeling of the first live show that was possible. The whole audience still had masks, but just to get the live feedback of applause, or seeing someone nodding their head, or seeing someone tap their foot, or see someone dance. It had been almost 2 years of doing these shows online, but only seeing a chat box. So it really made us, how they always say, you only know the worth of something once you've lost it. Now, live performance, every live performance, it's just such an extra gift. Every time I go out and I perform live, I'm just so grateful that thank you for taking the time to come all the way here to see us and to like share this space with us. So I think it did good, even though it was very hard. A lot of people lost their jobs. Most of my friends, we all lost so many gigs that may never come back. Like entire touring seasons were cancelled. But it also did some good.
Right. And I'm happy for the good that's done you. And I wish for great things in your future work.
Thank you, Sean. So great.
Of course. Well, Annette, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and thanks again for taking the time to appear on Asian Movie Pulse interviews. I guess to end this, my question to you is, are there any projects you would like to promote?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, thank you, Sean, for this beautiful platform, and for being so generous with your time and really creating a spotlight for so many people. It's wonderful, and much gratitude to you. And projects that are coming up, well, as I mentioned, the Berklee Indian Ensemble debut album is out, and you can find our music on berkleeindianensemble.com. We have a new website, and besides the 10 songs, there's about another 40 videos online that people can check out, both live performances, workshops, as well as studio recordings. My group, Women of the World, will also be going back on tour, hopefully in April. We will, and the Indian Ensemble is also going on tour March and April of next year. And so we'll do a pan-US tour in March and April. So we hope to see people out in the world sometime. And other than that, just really excited to see, let's see what happens at the Grammys on February 5th. All
right. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Of course. I guess to further add to that, for audiences, Godzilla Singular Point, which Annette Philip helped contribute to the soundtrack to, is available for streaming on Netflix, both in English and Japanese language. And of course, definitely consider enrolling in the Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts. It's an exceptional university. So, Alrighty, well, thank you so much, Annette, and thank you all for tuning in. And this is Asian Movie Pulse Interviews, tuning out.